Every time you procrastinate, every time you make an excuse, it isn't just a few minutes lost. It's your life slipping away. Tonight, 7 brutal Stoic truths will rip apart the excuses you cling to and return to you one priceless gift: the time to truly live. Think about the last time you told yourself, "I'll start tomorrow." It sounded innocent, maybe even kind, a little mercy for yourself after a long day. But beneath that softness, something dangerous was happening. Every excuse, every delay, every quiet "not today" is theft. And what's being stolen is the only currency you will never get back: your time. You can earn more money. You can rebuild your health sometimes. You can repair broken relationships. But time, once it's gone forever. Seneca saw procrastination as a thief that enters your life unnoticed. It doesn't come with alarms. It hides inside your routines, disguised as comfort, distraction, or busyness. Days melt into weeks, weeks into years, until one day you look back and realize the life you meant to live never began. And here's the brutal truth: no one else stole it. You gave it away. Modern psychology agrees. Excuses protect your ego in the moment. They make you feel safe, like you're waiting for the right time. But underneath, they chip away at your standards until mediocrity feels natural. Excuses don't shield you. They suffocate you. And this is where Stoicism cuts through the fog. It doesn't whisper sweet reassurance. It speaks with a clear, cold voice. Life is short, control is limited, and wasting time is the most irrational betrayal of all. The truths you're about to face will not comfort you. They will sting. They will feel harsh. But in their harshness lies liberation. Because when excuses die, action begins. And only then does your real life truly start. These truths will not be gentle. They will cut deep. But that's why they will set you free. Truth 1. Your hours are your life. Stop selling them cheap. Your hours are your life. That's the mantra you must carry like a stone in your pocket, heavy enough to remind you of what's at stake. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled amid war and plague, often calculated his life not by years, but by days remaining. He knew that each sunrise was not just a beginning, but also a subtraction, a quiet countdown toward the inevitable end. And so he asked himself, again and again, how will I spend this day, the only one I can truly claim? You too have felt the fragility of time. Maybe it was in a hospital waiting room, or after a phone call that changed everything, or simply in the quiet moment when you noticed another year had passed and nothing inside you had moved forward. Yet, despite this knowledge, you still surrender your most precious resource in the most ordinary ways. 2 hours scrolling on your phone doesn't feel catastrophic, but added up, 2 hours a day becomes 30 days a year. That's an entire month gone. A month that could have been a degree earned, a business started, a skill mastered, or a relationship deepened. Stretch it out over 10 years, and you have given away 10 months of your life, nearly a year, to a glowing screen, to nothing. Psychologists call this temporal discounting, the tendency to value the immediate hit of pleasure over the larger reward waiting in the distance. It's why a cookie beats the gym, why another episode beats an early night, why comfort in the present outweighs growth in the future. Your brain tricks you into trading what matters most for what matters now. And yet, every time you do, you are gambling with the one thing you can never win back: Consider Jeff Bezos before Amazon. He was in a secure, well-paying job on Wall Street, but he sensed a rare opportunity in the rise of the internet. Still, quitting was terrifying. To make his decision, he used what he called the regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at 80 years old, looking back on his life. Would he regret trying and failing? Or would he regret never trying at all? The answer was obvious. He left his job, built his company, and changed not just his own destiny, but the world's. You don't need to build Amazon, but you do need to face your own regrets before it's too late. Stoicism demands that you face the countdown honestly. Life is not a rehearsal. The minutes slipping through your hands as you watch, wait, and postpone are not practice rounds. They are your life. When you tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, you are gambling that tomorrow will come, and there will be a morning when it doesn't. So the question is this: if you only had 1 year left to live, what habit, what distraction, what excuse would you abandon today? Not someday, not later. Today. Write it down. Speak it aloud. And then cut it away. Because time is not just a measure of your life. Time is your life. And you don't have a second to waste. Truth 2. Where your focus goes, your life follows. Where your focus goes, your life flows. Every choice you make is really a choice about attention. And attention is the purest form of currency you will ever spend. You pay with it in every conversation, every project, every distraction. Unlike money, there is no refund, no earning it back once it is gone. Epictetus warned, "Do not become a slave to noise." He wasn't just speaking of sound, but of anything that scatters the mind and pulls you away from what truly matters. To lose your attention is to lose your life in small, invisible slices. Modern psychology has uncovered just how fragile your attention really is. Researchers describe something called attention residue, the lingering trace of a task you leave unfinished when you jump to another. Each time you check your phone in the middle of work or glance at your email while talking to a friend, a fragment of your mind remains stuck on a thing you abandoned. Multitasking, despite its seductive name, is not mastery. It is death by division. Your brain does not split itself cleanly. It bleeds. And with every bleed, you lose depth, presence, and clarity. You've seen this in the simplest of moments. Picture a mother at dinner, scrolling through her phone while her child waits for her eyes. Finally, the child asks softly, "Mom, do you like me? Or do you like the screen more?" That sting cuts deeper than any lecture because it reveals the truth. Where your attention goes, your love follows. If your focus is fractured, the people around you feel it. They know, even if you pretend otherwise. The same law applies in the workplace. In any meeting, the person who holds the room's attention also holds its outcome. It may not be the smartest or the loudest voice, but the one who directs the flow of focus shapes the decision. Attention is leadership. Attention is power. And when you allow your own attention to be hijacked by phones, by chatter, by endless tasks, you surrender that power before the battle even begins. Consider Angela Merkel, the former German chancellor. Through crises that spanned financial collapse, migration, and political upheaval, she became known not for bombast or charisma, but for her steady, unshakable focus. While others flailed in distraction or panic, she sat still, listened deeply, and returned again and again to what mattered most. Her composure, Her ability to resist the noise allowed her to steer not just a country, but an entire continent. She showed that real strength is not scattered energy, but focused presence. You may not be leading nations, but you are leading your own life, and the same principle applies. Your attention is your compass. If you scatter it across endless screens, empty conversations, and shallow tasks, your life will scatter with it. But if you direct it to your craft, your loved ones, your health, your growth, everything sharpens, deepens, and expands. So ask yourself with brutal honesty, who or what controls your attention right now? Is it you? Or is it your phone, your inbox, the endless scroll of someone else's life? Each moment you hand it away, you make a trade. You give up presence, progress, and peace for noise. The Stoics urge you to take it back. Guard your attention as fiercely as your freedom, because in truth, they are the same. Truth. 3. Comfort is slowly killing you. The Stoics knew this long before modern science confirmed it. Comfort is seductive, but it rots you from the inside out. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, deliberately spent days living like a pauper. Coarse bread, rough clothing, intentional lack, not to punish himself, but to test fear and strip it of its power. He rehearsed discomfort so that real hardship would not surprise him. He trained himself to want less, so he would not be owned by desire. Modern psychology gives this practice a name, hormesis, the idea that small, controlled stressors make you stronger. Like a muscle that needs to be overloaded to grow, your resilience increases when you voluntarily accept manageable hardship. Avoid discomfort entirely, and you do not preserve yourself. You train fragility. You teach your body, your attention, and your will to shrink at the first sign of resistance. You can see this truth in tiny, everyday choices. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Put your alarm across the room so you have to rise to turn it off. Sit in silence for 5 minutes instead of reaching for your phone the moment you wake. These look trivial until you add them, day after day. Each small refusal of ease sends a signal you can endure. Each surrendered small test sends another signal you prefer softness. Multiply those signals over months and years, and you've sculpted either toughness or tenderness into your character. For a vivid, viral example, look at David Goggins. He was once obese, depressed, and directionless. Through relentless, often brutal choice-making, running into storms, embracing pain, refusing the comfortable life, he remade himself into one of the hardest endurance athletes alive. His mantra, "Stay hard," is not masochism. It is a refusal to let comfort calcify into weakness. He trains himself to welcome the hard so that when life inevitably delivers hardship, he is not broken by it. That lesson scales down to you. You don't need ultramarathons to practice resilience, but you do need the habit of choosing the harder, strengthening route when it matters. And then there's the compact clarity of Jocko Willink's creed. Discipline equals freedom. That phrase is a small image you can carry in your pocket. Discipline is the habit of choosing what's right over what's easy. Freedom is the result. Place your phone in another room for an hour of focused work, and you create the freedom to produce. Make a rule to take cold showers 3 mornings a week or to write 500 words before breakfast, and you create the freedom to be fit, clear, and productive. These micro-disciplines are not punishments. They're investments in a future that will not be stolen by comfort. Comfort promises safety, but it delivers slow decay. Discomfort stings in the moment, but builds a durable strength you will rely on when life hurts in ways you could not predict. The Stoics saw it plainly. Soft lives break easily. So ask yourself, without flinching, what small comforts are secretly making you weaker? Which tiny, habitual avoidance is teaching you to retreat instead of to stand? Find that place. Design one modest daily discomfort. Stairs instead of elevator, alarm across the room, a 5-minute cold splash, a brief period of focused work without your phone, and practice it until it becomes a vote for the person you want to become. Choose discomfort on your terms before it chooses weakness for you. Truth. 4. Every excuse is a slow suicide. There's a quiet but deadly trap that destroys potential long before failure ever arrives. The excuse. On the surface, excuses feel protective. They shield your ego. They soften the sting of falling short, and they create a story where you're never really at fault. But beneath that comfort lies rot. Every excuse you tell yourself is a silent agreement to live below your capacity. You don't lose years in one dramatic blow. You lose them in a steady trickle of excuses. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus never tolerated this form of self-deception. He said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." His warning was clear. Philosophy, like life itself, isn't about words, reasons, or explanations. It's about action. If you say you value discipline but skip the hard work, then your excuse is the only philosophy you're truly living. Modern psychology has a term for this: self-handicapping. It's the mental trick of building a ready-made excuse before you even try. Students might stay up late before an exam, so if they fail, they can blame fatigue instead of their ability. Professionals procrastinate on projects, so if results disappoint, they can say, "I didn't really put in my best effort." On the surface, this preserves the ego. In reality, it erodes self-respect. Each excuse shields you from temporary pain, but robs you of long-term growth. You see this in everyday life constantly. Someone claims, "I don't have time to work out," yet the same person spends 2 hours scrolling or watching Netflix each evening. The excuse isn't about lack of time. It's about misplaced priorities. The lie is hidden under convenience, but the result is undeniable. Weaker health, weaker will, weaker self. Now contrast that with someone who chose a different story. Viola Davis, one of the most respected actresses of our time, grew up in poverty so harsh that she often went to school hungry. She could have let her circumstances become a permanent excuse. She could have said, "It's impossible for someone like me to succeed." But instead, she chose to act, to train, to pursue her craft with relentless focus. She once described her hunger not just as physical, but as fuel, a force that pushed her forward rather than holding her back. Today, when she accepts awards, she doesn't thank her excuses. She thanks the discipline that allowed her to outgrow them. Excuses whisper comfort, but steal your future. They promise protection, but deliver decay. And here's the hard part. They often disguise themselves as reasonable explanations. "I'll start when things settle down. I can't focus until I'm in the right environment. I would try if I had their resources." On the surface, these statements sound logical, even fair. But dig deeper and you'll see the truth. They are a permission slip to stagnation. The Stoics believed that freedom comes not from removing obstacles, but from refusing to be controlled by them. That includes the obstacles we invent in our own minds. Every time you catch yourself making an excuse, you stand at a crossroads. Either protect your ego in the moment or protect your potential in the long run. So the real question is this: what story are you protecting? Are you defending your potential or defending the very habits that keep you small? Are you choosing discipline or are you choosing the slow poison of excuses? Because in the end, excuses are not harmless words. They're commitments to mediocrity, to weakness, to regret. And every time you use one, you sign a silent contract with failure. So, who benefits from your excuses? Your future self or the comfortable lie you're telling today? Truth 5. Habits shape destiny. Goals alone mean nothing. Goals sound impressive. They look good on paper, they inspire big speeches, and they make you feel like you're in motion. But goals by themselves are illusions. They don't get you out of bed at 5 a.m. They don't help you resist the cookie when you're trying to eat clean. They don't build skill, strength, or mastery. Systems do. The Stoics knew this long before productivity gurus put it into books. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, didn't rely on vague goals to stay grounded under the crushing weight of power. Instead, he used a system: his daily journaling. Those private pages weren't meant for the public. They were his training ground. Each morning and evening, he wrote reminders to himself, lessons on humility, discipline, mortality. He wasn't just setting lofty targets. He was shaping his mind one page at a time. The system mattered more than the outcome, and it's why his words still guide millions nearly 2,000 years later. Modern psychology echoes this with the compound effect. Small, repeated actions, habits, build into extraordinary results over time. Write 200 words a day, and you'll have a book by the end of the year. Save a modest sum each week, and you'll have wealth decades later. Practice a skill for just 15 minutes daily, and in 5 years, you'll be unrecognizable in your expertise. Goals might inspire you for a moment, but habits compound silently, invisibly, and inevitably. Think about your own life. You might set a goal to get healthy, but unless you create a system, say, scheduling your workouts at the same time every day, or preparing your meals on Sunday night, the goal remains a wish. Systems anchor behavior. They automate discipline. They free you from the fragile bursts of motivation that vanish the moment life gets messy. The everyday truth is simple. Consistency beats intensity. Writing just 200 words daily doesn't feel like much. It's barely 10 minutes of your time. But stack those days, and you suddenly hold a manuscript in your hands. That's the hidden power of systems. They transform the invisible into the inevitable. History offers another powerful example in Epictetus. Born a slave, he had no access to wealth, privilege, or position. His goal wasn't freedom in the material sense. He couldn't control that. Instead, he built a system of daily reflection and self-examination. By training his mind every day to focus on what he could control, he turned limitation into liberation. That system carried him from slavery to becoming one of the most respected philosophers in history. It wasn't a goal that saved him, it was the discipline of his system. Contrast this with how most people operate today. They set New Year's resolutions, lose weight, learn a language, save money, but abandon them within weeks. Why? Because a goal without a system is like a ship without sails. The intention is there, but the mechanism to move forward is missing. The Stoics would argue that your systems reveal who you truly are. Do you have a system for reflection, for discipline, for training your body and mind? Or do you drift, hoping that motivation will strike? The truth is, motivation is fickle. Systems are reliable. Every action you repeat is a vote for the person you're becoming. The question is not whether you have systems. You do. The question is whether they are building you up or wearing you down. Doom scrolling before bed is a system. So is checking email first thing in the morning. These two will compound, but into distraction and stress, rather than mastery and peace. So, ask yourself, are you clinging to goals that flatter your ego? Or are you building systems that shape your future? What invisible system is shaping your destiny right now? One that strengthens you, or one that slowly erodes you? Truth. 6. Every yes to others is a no to yourself. On the surface, saying yes feels generous. It feels cooperative. It makes you look agreeable. But beneath the smile, every careless yes drains you. Every unnecessary commitment robs your time, your focus, your energy. What seems like a small concession in the moment often grows into resentment, exhaustion, and the quiet death of your own priorities. The Stoics warned us about this trap. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." Why? Because often improvement requires saying no to opportunities, to distractions, to social obligations that look normal. People might call you strange, antisocial, even arrogant, but that discomfort is the price of protecting your limited energy. Stoicism teaches that your life belongs to you, not to the endless expectations of others. Modern psychology describes the same danger through decision fatigue. Every time you say yes, whether to a meeting, an email, or a favor, you spend a piece of your willpower. And willpower is finite. By the time you've burned it on trivial yeses, you have nothing left for the decisions that actually matter. That's why you feel depleted after a day full of obligations you didn't want in the first place. Picture this in everyday life. You agree to work late, even though you promised yourself a family dinner. You say yes to a weekend project, even though your body is begging for rest. On the outside, you look responsible. Inside, you're drained, bitter, and silently angry at the very people you wanted to please. That's the hidden cost of yes. It often plants the seeds of resentment. Contrast that with the power of no. Shonda Rhimes, one of the most successful showrunners in television, discovered this firsthand. For years, she was the woman who said yes to projects, appearances, collaborations, and she was drowning. Then came what she called her year of no. She stopped accepting every request. She protected her time, her health, her creativity. And the result? She rediscovered joy in her work and energy in her life. Saying no didn't shrink her world. It expanded it because it gave her back the bandwidth to create and live fully. The truth is, saying no is an act of survival. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing that your time is your life. Every yes you give away is a slice of that life you'll never recover. The Stoics would tell you bluntly, if you cannot say no, you have surrendered control of your existence. Think about this practically. If you're constantly stretched thin, it isn't because the world is uniquely demanding. it's because you haven't yet learned the discipline of refusal. Saying no is not cruelty. It's clarity. It's the courage to protect what matters most: your health, your family, your purpose. Of course, no one applauds you for it. When you refuse a favor or decline an invitation, people may label you difficult. That's where Epictetus's warning becomes essential. Be willing to be thought foolish, because the alternative is far worse: being thought agreeable while secretly betraying yourself. So the next time you feel pressured to agree, pause. Ask, if I say yes, what am I saying no to in my own life? Will this decision support my long-term values, or is it just another leak in the bucket of my time and energy? The world will always ask for more. Only you can decide when enough is enough. Who do you need to say no to this week, so you can finally say yes to yourself? Truth 7. Your non-negotiables guard your freedom. At first glance, rules look like restrictions. They feel like chains, rigid boundaries in a world that celebrates flexibility. But the Stoics understood something far deeper. Rules are not prison bars. They are guardrails. Without them, you drift, pulled by every distraction and every demand. With them, you move straight toward the life you actually want. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the Roman Empire, held firm to simple personal rituals. Each morning he would remind himself of what kind of day awaited him: interference, selfishness, arrogance. Then he reminded himself who he chose to be in response: patient, steady, disciplined. Those morning reflections were his non-negotiables. No matter how chaotic the empire, he returned to those rules to anchor his identity. Modern psychology calls this identity-based habits. Most people rely on motivation, which rises and falls like the weather. But identity is stable. If you see yourself as a person who honors family dinners, you don't debate whether to show up. You just do. If you define yourself as an athlete, training isn't optional. It's part of who you are. Non-negotiables work because they're rooted in identity, not fleeting moods. Consider the everyday story of a father who decides, no matter what, I'll be home for dinner. He might still face deadlines, traffic, or temptation to stay late at the office, but that single rule shapes everything: his schedule, his priorities, his sense of self. Over time, it becomes culture. His children grow up knowing that family dinner is sacred. A simple, non-negotiable rule protects the bond of an entire household. Now look at Simone Biles, perhaps the greatest gymnast in history. At the peak of her career, under the spotlight of the Olympics, she faced an impossible choice: push through mental strain and risk injury, or step back and protect herself. The world expected her to sacrifice everything for medals, but her non-negotiable was clear: health before performance. She withdrew. To some, it looked like weakness. To others, it was a master class in strength. By honoring her boundary, she preserved her body, her mind, and her future. Her rule didn't limit her, it liberated her. This is the paradox of discipline. Boundaries create freedom. Think of it like a river. Without banks, water spills everywhere and stagnates. With banks, the river flows with force and direction. Your non-negotiables are the banks that allow your life to flow with power instead of waste. But here's the brutal truth. If you don't consciously create your own rules, The world will create them for you. Your employer's deadlines, your phone's notifications, society's demands. They'll dictate your schedule, your priorities, your identity. And you'll wake up one day realizing you lived by everyone's rules but your own. That's why the Stoics were uncompromising about their disciplines. Aurelius journaled. Epictetus taught daily reflection. Seneca practiced poverty to test his courage. Each of them knew that without personal rules, philosophy would collapse under the weight of circumstance. So ask yourself, what are your 3 non-negotiables? They don't need to be grand. They just need to be immovable. Maybe it's, I train my body daily. I protect 1 hour for deep work. I never miss Sunday dinner with my family. These rules, small as they seem, will shape the entire architecture of your life. Because in the end, freedom isn't the absence of rules. Freedom is living by rules you chose. Rules that guard your values, strengthen your identity, and keep you unshakable in a world designed to pull you apart. What are the 3 non-negotiables that will protect your freedom? Even when everything else is uncertain, the ticking of a clock. Each second slips away, indifferent to whether you waste it or wield it. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is not meant to terrify you. It is meant to free you." We have walked through 7 brutal truths. Time cannot be replaced. Attention is your true currency. Comfort weakens you if you worship it. Excuses are lies that rot the soul. Systems quietly shape your destiny. Saying no is often the only way to say yes to yourself. And finally, your non-negotiable rules, your guardrails, are what give you real freedom. These truths do not coddle you. They cut. They strip away illusions. They leave you staring at the mirror without excuses to hide behind. But that is why they liberate you. Because only when excuses die can you truly live. Think of your life as a canvas. Every wasted hour is a blank patch left unpainted. Every choice rooted in excuses is a brush dropped to the floor. But every time you claim your time, guard your attention, embrace discomfort, reject excuses, build systems, say no, and honor your rules, you are painting with bold strokes. You are creating a work of art that belongs only to you. The question is no longer whether you have time. The question is whether you will stop wasting it. So here's my challenge to you. Don't try to master all 7 truths at once. Pick just one. Live it ruthlessly for 7 days. Watch what happens. You may discover that one small discipline begins to rewrite everything else. These truths are not gentle. They are not meant to soothe you. But if you let them shape you, they will make you unshakable. And when that happens, your life will no longer be stolen by excuses. It will finally, fully be lived. Choose one truth. Live it for 7 days. Then come back and tell us what changed.